spent the day together today. Had lunch and then went to the National Music Centre.
Yes.
And I've been completely inspired since that interaction. So thanks for sitting down and chatting with us.
No problem. I'm happy to be here, and hi to everyone here. Thanks for coming.
First thing, let's start off where you started. So when you were a young person, when did you get started? What did you start playing on? How did you find yourself as this musician?
Well, I started writing songs at about 8 or 9 years old. I was just writing silly little songs, just like whatever came to mind, and just writing it down and playing on my keyboard. It was just like a little tiny portable keyboard. But then the obsession grew, and I got, a Casio, a much larger keyboard. But I was really obsessed with going through the sounds in the keyboard, and that's what started my fascination with electronic instruments. And then, aside from that, I started recording myself at around 10 on cassette. So I had a karaoke machine. I don't know if anyone remembers those, but they were
Unfortunately.
cool. I mean, they were really cool because, of course, they were meant to do karaoke, but on an audio file level, there were 2 decks. So you can record yourself, then you could record over yourself. So I started dubbing my own vocals at that age, around 10 or 11. I didn't have any brothers and sisters, so I was just doing that in my free time, along with video games and any other little electronics that I could get my hands on. And yeah, it was just obsession, really. Also, what was cool back then was that I would go buy cassette tapes. So I don't know if anyone in here remembers going to buy cassettes. I really came at the tail end of that movement. I am more of a CD baby, ironically, CD baby. But when you bought a tape, it would have the instrumental on like the B side. It would have the instrumental and it would have the acapellas. So I didn't know what to do with acapellas. I was not that advanced yet, but what I could do is record myself on the instrumental. So I was singing on the instrumental, and then I would start to dub my vocals and sing the harmonies, because I was in choir growing up, and gospel choir and all of that, school choir. So I just wanted to sing, and I was like, oh, I could keep it. I can keep it and listen to it again. So the process of recording is just something that I grew to become obsessed with.
We're talking a little bit today about enablers within the music industry and how especially women in the music industry need certain enablers. You named a few, one of them being your mother. And in doing some research for this little project, I read that you had been recording on cassettes as a 10-year-old in the institution that your mother was working at as a nurse, doing feminist manifesto recordings. So I want to hear you speak a little bit to how people can enable each other, what great enablers are for women in the music scene, and what your views are on that.
Well, I feel like in music, traditionally women have been encouraged to just be vocals. Come sing the hook, come sing the verse. But no one has really encouraged women to get behind the boards, learn the consoles, and learn how to sample and, all the things that you can do in production, which is endless, right? We have some producers in here, so the possibilities are endless. All of that takes a lot of patience and a lot of encouragement. And when you don't see other women like yourself, or you don't grow up seeing other girls doing it, you're like, oh, why would I waste my time doing that? However, throughout my experience of being a producer, I've come into contact with all genders of people who just connected with me on the basis of I love music. So I would encourage anyone who just loves music, whatever gender you are, to find that other person who loves music just as much as you, and just to geek out and nerd out all the time. And that will become a type of support that you will have when you're creating music, because you need that support. You're going to be making version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4 of a track, and you're going to be changing and tweaking it every time. So if you don't have anyone in your life to have feedback on your track, or just listen to it and say, yo, could you dance to this or whatever, it would be hard. It would be hard. So I think a good enabler is someone who is easy to talk to, but is a great listener and can be constructive with criticism, and who will just be down and nerd out with you. That's number one. Just building. Like, forget all the give me feedback stuff, but like, can you meet with somebody? I like to call link up with someone who will just sit and listen to tracks for hours with you and your favorite mixes, and like look at boiler rooms with you and all of those things. Like, once you find people like that, keep finding people like that, and you keep finding, and then you create your own community that will really help you to facilitate your own dream.
I really like that, just kind of like reaching out to that one person and seeing what they have to say. And I think the internet has become a huge part of that as well, because you can reach out to someone across the world. You don't even have to have someone in your backyard. You could be from a small town and have someone.
I mean, I kind of started that way. I started, who remembers AOL? Put your hands up. Hey. I had AOL. I had dial-up, 56K, whoa. And then there was broadband. That was a whole nother wave. But yeah, I started off just like in AOL chat rooms, kind of like talking about hip hop with people. And like my first pen pal I made was like this MC from Ann Arbor. And like he sent me a CD. And I just remember those days, like, it wasn't Instagram, it wasn't Facebook, it wasn't any of that. But these were real people. Then you start to, like, talk on the phone. And it was, like, kind of weird, but also really cool. And it was pure in the sense that we just wanted to talk about music and put each other on. We're like, yo, do you know about this? Do you know about that? And the more we were building, the more I felt excited to go to the record store on Tuesdays, I guess it was then, and get the new record, or Friday when my mom got paid, and go get a new CD or something, and then go back online and talk about it. So those are like some of the first friends I made, because I kind of grew up in a more rural area. I've lived in a lot of different places, but I grew up in a more rural suburban area. So it wasn't like really cool. Like, I wasn't there in New York when like the Raekwon Purple tape dropped and like all the cool stuff happened that I wish I was around for. But I was finding people that were, and I was able to talk with them as things were progressing in hip hop culture. So that was really cool.
It seems to me like you've always been based on this collaborative process. And even looking at the last 3 releases of yours, Zone 1 through 3, which I will say are EPs, but they're like 11 tracks, so we could say full albums at this point. Who's going to condemn you for that? But you have a lot of collaborations going on. So I'm curious to know, how do you approach a project that is collaborative versus how do you approach one that is an individual creation?
For a collaborative project, the first thing you need is patience. And the second thing you need is open-mindedness. And I would say thirdly, have no expectation as far as what the outcome will be. When you're approaching a collaboration, or when I approach a collaboration, I try not to think about the quality of the end result, because you don't know what the end result will become. But I try to place quality in the process of creating, and that's more valuable. Like, say we're just jamming on the synth. If we're jamming, but like maybe you're not there, we haven't figured out a melody, I would go like, okay, like let's try some different sounds or whatever. But if you're really into it, I'm going to stand back. And when you collaborate, standing back and listening and watching what the person you're collaborating with is doing is so vital to you really pushing through the process. And then you keep adding not just sounds, but activities to the process of collaborating. And the more you do it, the more positive you'll see that the process becomes. It's like really amazing what you can create. You don't even know what you will create when you sit down with someone. So like I said, I don't have any expectations when I collab with someone. I try to sit and talk for a little bit and just to see what inspirations the other person has. Like, what are you listening to? What's been on your playlist? That kind of thing. Once you start like that, you'll get an idea if you know what they like or not and then that natural conversation will happen and the process will begin to flow like that. But it's really human. It's really human to just sit and begin a conversation and then start talking about an instrument and say, oh my gosh, I have this VST. Why don't we try this? Like, you know, keep a real open mind and don't get frustrated. I would say when you're collaborating with people, don't get frustrated. You can't get tired. Like, you can get exhausted in the process. Like, say you're going back and forth for like 3 hours and you're just like, where is this going? Like, maybe we should take a break or go play a video game or, you know, have an Instagram break or whatever your thing is. But I would say don't get frustrated. That's like not where you want to go when you collaborate with someone. But yeah, I'm really collaborative. Like I said, I grew up, I have 2 half sisters, but I grew up an only child. So I was always looking for people to play with. I'm like, hey, let's do this thing. Like, let's do this cool thing. Nobody wanted to do anything I wanted to do. So, so now I get my revenge.
Except over AOL.
Yeah. AOL was so fun.
So what about when you're doing your individual creative process? Are you as patient with yourself as you would be with others? Or how does that look when you're sitting down in front of your Moog or whatever the case might be?
When I sit down to begin a track, I try not to start too seriously. I'm just like, what vibe am I on right now? Like, do I feel like beautiful tingly sounds? Do I want like some hard drums? Like, and I don't have a template. I have my folders kind of organized, and I think organization is really helpful. I would recommend for you to be as organized as possible. But for me, where I am right now, I just try to keep everything open because I'm working on so many different kinds of projects that if I had one template, I feel like I would sell myself short. So, you know, I sit down and I just try to be as real with myself as possible. Like, do I really feel like making something in 80? Do I want to change to 120? Like, or did I just hear or watch something that inspired me to like, let me see if I can make a disco track? Like, you know, I'll try to just get inspired by whatever real life just happened before me. And that is the process that I did with Zones. Zones instrumentals are based off of real life situations and stories. And they're not, some of them aren't deep. I have a track called Beach Cruiser. I'll play it for you later. But Beach Cruiser was literally like when I moved to Miami, and I'm like, wow, people just like cruise on the beach. It was that simple. But it was a thing. It's like I've lived in Philly and New York and Baltimore, and it's like people don't cruise on the beach there. Like, this is a thing. Like, they're cruising on their bike, they're strolling when they're walking. It's a breezy place. And so I tried to capture the sound of what a beach cruiser would be like in the track, and it was that simple. So everything is not like a super deep story or anything. Sometimes it's just like, what real life thing fascinated me that day, and how can I make a track inspired by that? Because I feel like when you start to make tracks and you're real with yourself in that way, you'll start to make honest work, like honest music that's real to yourself, and you won't think like, oh, I want to make a club banger. Because sometimes as artists, we limit ourselves. We sit down, we're like, yo, we need to make a new rap track because I want to MC on it. Like, maybe you're thinking about the final product too much. Maybe you just need to make a track that sounds like something you like, instead of trying to make a track that sounds like something that somebody you don't know yet likes. You know, that's kind of weird, right? So yeah, I just try to keep it open, not take it too seriously. When I feel like I have something strong going, I stick with it and try to build on it. If it's something that I like this loop, try to build on the loop, and then try to trust yourself throughout the process.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Never Normal, your record label. You have a background in communications, and to me it really shines through when you discuss what you're doing with Never Normal, because it seems to be like a multimedia label. You're releasing music, you're doing it on cassette, but you're also going through fashion, you're doing online promotions. So speak a little bit to what Never Normal is, if you can, and how you've integrated all sorts of different facets to cut through different audiences and to get to different demographics.
Yeah, well, Never Normal is a 3-year-old label. It's basically a toddler. I started it when I was in New York, and I was like I was making tapes already. I was making merch, just one-off stuff. And people in New York were taking me seriously. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll just make a label then. And so I started making more tapes, like focused projects with focus works and campaigns and videos and things like that behind it. And just really building on the process a little deeper. And so Never Normal is an audio visual label. So the projects aren't just limited to things that you can go play on Spotify. More recently, we just did a live score of an experimental horror film at Moog Fest, which was called No Moon, No Man. And it's just like a performance, and that's a project of Never Normal. And there's all types of experiential art events that we've done. And really, it's all about building on the unexpected. On a day-to-day basis, we live with such like expectations and such routine that I'm trying to make work that builds on the unexpected and shows the beauty of the unexpected and shows how if we trust that, we can come together, you know, as a world. We all have differences, but our differences are amazing and beautiful. And if we listen to that, if we see that more often on a daily basis, if we hear that, then, you know, we can come together. You know, we all know the world needs healing right now. So that's the basis, the central, my hippy dippy answer of what Never Normal is. But, you know, it's a collection, an archive of next level music and visual coming from artists from all around the world and just building on it day by day.
I want to get into the nitty gritty of it a little bit.
Sure.
I noticed today on your BandCamp that you have a monthly subscription option. I haven't seen that on BandCamp. I've heard about it for, say, beat producers who are leasing them out for, I don't know, commercials or for other artists to go over. But on BandCamp specifically, you're releasing, correct me if I'm wrong, to anyone who subscribes, kind of your monthly whimsy, whatever you've built that month or whatever's in your catalog that you haven't released. So what brought you to do that, and how has it worked for you, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I love BandCamp. I know BandCamp got a lot of like side eye after like iTunes and things got cool, but BandCamp is so awesome, and I would recommend that any artist in here use it and partner with them, and they love to give attention to artists who are really utilizing it. I was one of the first people to sell tapes on BandCamp. And I had to hack that. Like, I forget how I like put that in, but there was no option to sell merch. But people were buying my tapes. So from that now to 2017, where I can have a subscription service, is really awesome. It's a way for me to build with other listeners who really want consistent work and content. Not only am I always making music, I'm always making content. So there's visuals, there's chats that I offer. So if you're like my top tier subscriber, we could do a chat, like a monthly chat, and you can talk with me about whatever projects you're working on, and like I'll give feedback and build with you, you know, for it's like a consultation, but that sounds weird. So yeah, I like to just use the digital portals to enhance the in real life connections that we can make, not just use the digital portals for like numbers, like look at my stats. It's like I can use the internet in a way to build with real people. And so that's what I try to offer through any services that I have online or any kind of links or whatever. I just try to make it real, make it more real.
And last year, your Zone 2 project charted on Billboard. This was through your label. And I'm just, that's amazing to me. Something, such a fringe sound getting charted onto the top 40 or, you know, within that list is pretty wild. So in finding your way to that point, in rising to that kind of level of popularity, what were the steps that you took through distribution or through promotion or through your Never Normal project that helped you get to that point?
Well, with Zones, the first thing that I did for Zones Volume 2 was a 7-day video countdown leading up into the drop of the project. So Zones has an audio-visual component where there's moods. There's 7 moods that go to 7 of the 11 tracks. So for each day, 7 days prior, I dropped a little video. And it wasn't gimmicky. It was real moods. Actually, my niece shot them. Like, she wanted to shoot videos with me. She's like, I want to shoot videos. I'm like, okay, come to New York and let's shoot some videos. And that's what we used. And I had an intern at the time, and she edited them. And it was like a really simple process. And I was like, whatever, I'm just doing this for fun, see where it goes. And one of the tracks got really popular, 000 in the Club, which also has like a backstory. But that's what charted on Billboard. And I believe that the use of the visuals added to the energy of making that track chart on Billboard. The use of the visuals reinforced the sound, if you will, and it didn't just make it a track, it made it like come to life for not just people who are already listening, but for people who weren't listening. They're like, wait, but what is this video? Or maybe it got sent to someone. Also, the track didn't chart for months until like months later after the project dropped, so it wasn't immediate. So that means the viral nature of the project itself grew, and it was being shared. And I think, again, that the visual rollout and the campaign, I don't like using these business terms, but I think the campaign helps to aid that. So, you know, my recommendation from there is that if you are doing a project, think about fun ways that people can get into it. Even if you're just releasing a single, think about a fun way that people can get into it, and people can touch it, you know, not just click it. You know, how can people like get sucked into your world? And I still am trying to figure out the mystery of the Billboard chart, but I was there and I'm happy.
So today we went to the National Music Centre. I watched your mind explode looking at all these different synths and all these different machines, these different organs. And I learned later on that you are a Moog-sponsored artist, and you've been through some workshops and conferences with them. Speak a little bit to what that meant, how you've learned to work with different analog or different digital synthesizers, maybe a few of your preferences for all the nerds out there.
Yeah, so shout out my nerds in the building. Never give up. It's only getting better. Yeah, I always thought that I didn't really think twice about loving electronics as much as I did, and how that led me into loving electronic music and listening to techno and just everything from a young age. I didn't think about it. However, meeting people like at Moog made me realize that, you know, this is a real thing, and that other people exist that I can connect with, because I came up in hip hop, really, like hip hop and soul and like R&B, but I was always making really progressive kind of music because I was listening to like BBC radio and everything, like when you just had to rip it off of the internet somehow. So, you know, how did I get started with Moog? I did their largest installation, their largest synth installation ever so far, I guess, at Rough Trade, which is a subsidiary record shop of the London label Rough Trade. And they had it in Brooklyn, and it was a curated event that curated women producers and musicians to play in this wall of sound. The wall was just like this wall onto the back, and it was all modular synths, and then they had the keyboard ones that were on the side, and we just played. We just jammed out and did a series of performances, did about 2 performances, and they offered, hey, if we like that so much, do you want to come to our festival? Do you want a sponsorship? It's like, okay. They didn't just offer it to me. They offered it to all of the women who were a part of it. But me in particular, the super nerd, just really kept emailing them like all the time and not even like asking for anything. I'm just like, I'm going to come to the festival. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, what's going on? How can I go? And just by showing interest, you know, to the life of what Moog stands behind, I've been able to connect and build with some of the reps there. And it's a great company. I mean, it has the vibe, like, I feel like Beat Drop has like a family kind of dynamic. Anybody can drop in, and it really feels like that at Moog. And it's not even a large company. It's all run in one building. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing what they do and how they bring people together and how many artists and records they've influenced over the years just by using their products. So, yeah, it's just been kind of like talking to like if I was on the basketball team at school, it's kind of what like Moog feels like to me. Like, just like, this is my coach, and like, this is like the team manager, like, and talk to them about the game and how we can build. And yeah, I'm still working on things with them, but my experience with Moog has been amazing, and they're family to me. Another support system that I found post releasing music. So my first support systems were just friends. That was before I released music, really. It's just like friends and homies, who's ever around. And now support systems are greater than that even. So it's been cool.
I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open things up to you guys to ask a few questions to Suzi, and we'll keep them kind of more general because Suzi will then go on and show you what she's got, and then you can ask some technical questions when she's gone through the whole workshop. But I wanted to kind of just touch on a topic that you spoke about at the beginning, and it crossed my mind, you know, there's a difference in the electronic world between, there seems to be a producer and a vocalist, and generally the producer's name is on the track and the vocalist is largely ignored, and in that's where women are kind of being smudged out of the record book. So that's my biggest example of how that might work, how women aren't being included in the narrative, and I'm wondering how you think we can include women in that narrative. Is it by just simply including the vocalist on everything, or encouraging women to produce, or talking to each other on the internet? What do you think?
True. I mean, I think it's all of the above. Number one, if you make a track, like, credit everybody who's on the track. Like, even if somebody played one piece of cymbal, like, put that person was on the track. They were instrumentalist. So that's number one. And for Zones, I've been able to break some new artists just by putting their names. I have a friend whose husband is from Jamaica, has never recorded in the United States before, and we recorded in New York. And I put him on the track, and then Fader wrote about it. And I'm like, cool, this is his first time releasing something. Now Fader covered it, and now he can build. And so for me, I try to lead by example. I do what I would want people to do for me if I were a new artist. So keeping that in mind is a great way for you to not mess up, not cut anybody out, and not burn any bridges, because that's not what you want to do in the music game. And, you know, crediting whoever's hands are in the pot is definitely important. But for women in particular, I would say it's up to us to make sure that we receive our credit, and make sure that we ask, hey, not even ask, just say, yes, I'll be on your track. However, gonna put this feature, and it goes even deeper than that. It goes down to publishing. It goes down to your cut and all the business aspect, which isn't as scary as it sounds, and is really cut and dry. What percentage do you own of the track? Start to think about those things. If you make music and you collaborate with people in general, start to think about those things, and make sure that those things are clear from the beginning of your process. Not saying go in the studio and say, yo, we're about to collaborate, so I need 30%. Like, don't do that. That's weird. However, if somebody were to mention to you, hey, that track we did a couple weeks ago, I'm thinking of putting that on my EP. You need to start to have a really serious conversation about where it's going to go, what outlets it's going to go on. And just as women, make sure we do that, because sometimes I would say we shy away from that. I have had friends who have collaborated with some of the top rappers in the world, not going to name names, but I've had to coach them through that. I'm like, yo, like, a woman telling me, oh, he's trying to like only give me a writer credit and I did some production. I'm like, if you don't go into that office, go into this meeting and say that this is what you did, you know, and this is what you deserve, we have to advocate for ourselves sometimes. And it's not easy, and it's not an easy conversation to have, but we have to power through it. So, you know, that's a piece of advice I would offer to other women, to start just advocating for yourself in that, right? And then other than that, support just everybody in here. Support women, period, please. Thank you. Like, even if you know a woman who's just, you know, still trying to get her sound together, or still trying to figure out how to do blends, or whatever she's trying to do, support her. You know, ask her anything. If she needs any cables, if she knows where to get them. Like, the technical stuff and the business stuff is where we shy away, because that's where, unfortunately, a lot of you know, negative energy has been placed for women to not overcome those ideas of the technology or the business of music. And so for those reasons, we shy away from them, and we don't feel as strongly as we should when we're making decisions in them. So when you support another woman, what you're doing is helping her feel empowered about making another decision for herself to keep going, because we don't have a lot of that. You can't make really sound decisions if you don't have anyone around you who believes that you're making a sound decision. So even if you just are like, yo, I like that blend, I like this thing, just show a little love. It's really easy. It's really simple to just push along someone, and then you'll be surprised where she ends up. I've seen some women really break through. Only in the last 5 years have I seen some women really break through electronic. But when I started, I didn't really know anyone. One person that I made friends with really quickly was Toki Monster. And we have a project called Analog Monster together, and we dropped that in 2011. We then toured with Bonobo for his Black Sands US tour, and it was just a simple, we're gonna empower each other move that we made, and she's killing it. I feel like I'm killing it.
Killing it. Yeah, killing it.
And you know, that support each other, support by Bonobo even believing in us to be like, yo, open my tour. That was really cool too. So even if you're booking events, please try to make your lineups balanced. I do like the all-girl nights. Those are cute, but I would really love to see men and women just playing together. Men, women, and everything in between. Playing all together, and yeah, let's just act like we're all humans and make music together and jams together, you know, have respect for one another.
Cool. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to open it up to you guys. If anyone has a question, I'm going to bring the mic to you, and then we'll do that way. Jeremy?
How's it going?
Great.
Good. Thank you for coming. So you said you are from Baltimore originally.
Yes.
Okay. So growing up in New York and Philly, and now you're in Miami, for the former three cities, like, did you pull any influences from that area? Like, from all three? Obviously, being from Baltimore, that's the product of your, you know, environment, you know, your hometown anyway. Now, did you pull influences from those other cities? And then being in Miami now, were you pulling, are you like using that as a clean slate to kind of like see like new influences, or did you know about that going to Miami to begin with?
Cool question. So growing up, I grew up listening to club music, like from the same ages that I was recording myself. I was listening to club music, like in the club, like club music. So I don't know if kids should be. I'm going to say they should. But, club music is cool. And so I always did have that sensibility of like what the club should feel like, because DJs were also live broadcasting their mixes from the club to the Saturday night mix. So you heard everything. Like, we in the club right now, come down to this address and turn up with us, whatever, like I'm like, I want to be there, but I'm 10. So, that to me, it really informs me of what a live, fun experience should be just from listening. And that did guide me in my musical choices when I was like coming into my teens. Like I was always looking for fun music. Then lived in Philly, and then of course New York, where party, I wouldn't say party music is like a thing in New York, but they had disco, they had hip hop, and Philly had Philly Club, which is a derivative of Be More Club. Fast forward to now, I do make tracks that are very juke and footwork inspired from Chicago. All of these places are very American Black centers of music. And going to Miami, I did have that sensibility that they love to party, they love club, they love electronic music down there, and it's a place where I can blend all of these influences and bring a new raw perspective to Miami without disrupting it too much. I can play 160 there or 140 there, and I can mix it into like cumbia or something, and like people will totally still get it. I can play a straight techno set and people will totally still get it. So Miami for me hasn't been a place where like it's like start brand new, but it's like how can I deepen my narrative and connect with all types of rhythms and timbres and bring that into my production experience. And it's been great so far. I wrote Zones Volume 3 there. So if you listen, you'll hear a lot of tropical influence in Zones Volume 3. Whereas if you listen to Volume 2, you'll hear like more hard and like some hip hop tracks, because I made that in New York, in LA too a little bit.
Awesome. I've got another question right here.
When you start the process, clean slate, do you begin with a beat?
Like a rhythmic beat?
Does it always start with a rhythmic beat, or do you use other things at sometimes to influence and then move towards that? Or you always start the same way?
This is a popular question, and I think it's a cool one. I don't always start with the beat, but I cannot be the end-all answer for this because I have training in musicality training, not just like beats and stuff. Like I come from a choral background, gospel background. So a lot of times I want to make a melody. And for me, synthesizers have helped that a lot, because with a synth, I can make a sequenced melody that's running on a clock. So that can give me a grounding to build the percussion on. So lately I've been into ARPs and synthesized sounds of that nature, because it's running on a clock that I can build a beat behind. But sometimes I start with the drums. I'm just not that kind of person, though, that's just going to start with the drums, because I'm not inspired by the drum sounds. I'm inspired by melodies and harmonies and tones, because I also do vocals.
A question stemming from that, just from myself before I pass it back on. Are you working on mostly analog or digital hardware? Are you working with Ableton? A simple question of what your systems are.
Yeah, right now it's a mix of things. I'm not all analog, I'm not all digital, but I use Ableton as my DAW, and right now I'm using the OP1 by Teenage Engineering. I have a Moog Mother 32. I have I just said OP1, Organelle by Critter and Guitari, which is really awesome, and I would highly recommend because they're so great. You can run sounds into them as well, just live plug-in sounds. And what else am I using? I'm about to start using the Rolly series of things. And I've jammed on everything, though. The Prophets, the more Moogs, more Rollins, more the MPC, the 808s, the 404s.
You knew everything at the National Music Center today. She was walking around and just calling out the name of everything we saw on site. So I'm not surprised by that at all. Questions again from the audience? Yeah.
Thanks for coming, by the way.
Thank you.
This one is, you mentioned earlier about trying to figure out the billboards and all that. What's your stance about what's going on with SoundCloud right now?
Okay. I don't
mean to get too serious, but it's a big discussion, right? I'll let you.
Everyone's on the edge of their seat about SoundCloud. I do not want SoundCloud to die, because SoundCloud is not just a site; it's a community, and we know that. We know that we have our playlists and everything. SoundCloud just has to think of better ways to interact with its users, I think, and find ways that we can all connect. They went after connecting with major label artists, and they kind of ignored a lot of independent artists, which is their real bread and butter. We're the ones who started. I started SoundCloud. I don't even remember what year. We weren't in the double digits yet, of 2000s. And I remember someone came out with a SoundCloud list, and it was like, these are the top 100 influential artists on SoundCloud. And it was like, I was on it, and it was like a whole bunch of people who are now like crazy famous now, and they were on it. And I'm like, yo, well, why didn't they ever holler at us? Like, why did they never build with us and reach out to us? So that's a problem, right? So they're ignoring a whole group of people that could really help them and sit down with them to find solutions to either monetize or stay afloat. But they're so deep in, and they've messed up for so long. So we'll see.
Shots fired.
Hey, I call it
that's
legacy.
great. I want to see what you have to show us on the push over there. And so I think what we'll do now is just kind of segue into what you guys are all here for, which is the workshop part of the evening. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.